G'day everyone, Dr. Alex Perry here, Chinese medicine doctor, coach, father, entrepreneur, publisher. Well, I suppose like you, I wear many hats, and today I'm putting on my coach's hat and welcoming you to 2015, which is, I can just tell, going to be a terrific year for everybody. Now, just while I get going. I have my kids with me today, so if there's a little bit of chatter in the background, I apologise. But I'm here on my own with my kids, who are having lunch and are terrific, by the way. All right. So today there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about, but the main goal for today is to really get you up and running. Start to think about setting some goals and start to think about getting 2015 underway, because if you don't start doing this now, you'll open your eyes, you'll put your head up, and it'll be February, March, April or May, and you'll still be thinking it's January. And I know this from experience. This first part of the year disappears very, very quickly. So this is the time to make a start. We're still middle of January. It's the perfect time to reassess your goals, reassess where you are in your clinic, and start to work towards having a terrific 2015. And I always like to start the year with a theme, and I've got a couple of themes for this year that I'd like to share with you. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to bounce between screens a little bit, so just bear with me as I do that. And the first theme that we're going to go with is this one: get it done. And I'm going to put an exclamation mark there, because you've got to get the work done. And one of the things that I've noticed over the course of the last 12 months with my coaching team members is that a lot of people struggle to get the work done, and we're all guilty of it. For various reasons, and a lot of the times it's because we're anxious about making change. A lot of the times it's because we struggle to find the time, and find the time is a bit of an excuse we use when really we're not using our time effectively, or we're not prioritizing the things that are most important to get done. So theme number one, and we'll come back to this again, is get it done. The second theme is that I want, and this will actually come from the first one, is create the belief. Oops, I should spell. Create the belief. And create the belief really comes from getting it done. And what do I mean by that? Well, create the belief is all about proving to you that it is possible. And one of the things that I've noticed is that, particularly with implementing programs or building things like that for our customers, then sorry, I've got some distraction in the background. Is that when you're doing something new, it's really hard to get not so much motivated, but to actually take the first steps in making it happen. And the most important thing you can do is refer to step one. Get it done. Okay, so I really want you to hang on to this theme, and I want you to keep it front and center in your mind for the whole year. The theme is get the work done, and it doesn't matter whether you think it's going to work or you think it's not going to work. You've just, in a sense, got to do it. And from that will come part two, which is create the belief. Okay, and once you've done it a couple of times, you'll see that not only is it possible, but that it's actually doable. And all of these things that we talk about in the program are skills. They're not inherent. They're not things that you were born with. They're not genetically encoded. These are skills like riding a bike, or learning to walk, or learning to drive, or learning to fly, whatever skill or ride a skateboard, or I don't know, a kite surf, or I don't know, play chess. They're all skills that need to be learned. And in my experience, the only way to really learn a skill and become proficient at it is to practice it. So when we're thinking about, and we'll get into this in more detail in a little while, when we think about developing a program, for example, or building a program for a client and going through that anatomy of a consultation, the only way to really get that down pat is to practice it and do it over and over and over again. And when people watch me do it with a client or with a patient for the first time, the comedy usually, it seems really natural, it seems very easy, and the patients 95 times out of 100 will actually sign up for that particular program. Now, is that because I'm better at it than you are? Well, right now, possibly, but why is that? The reason is because I've practiced it. So if you've watched me do that with a client, and I know some people on the team have, then what you've seen is perhaps the 200 or 300 or 400th time that I've done that, which is why it seems so effortless and so easy. So what you've got to do really is to practice. And, you know, the ideal scenario is to do it in real life. So my suggestion is theme 1, get it done. Next time you've got a new patient, start to practice these things. Part 2 is build a belief. And once you've done it a few times and you start to see that it's working, then you're going to see that you not only can you do it, but it becomes easier and easier the more you get into it. Thank you, Madison. Goodbye. Excuse me. All right. So, just excuse me a second. Ethan, can you please go and sit over there? Thank you. So that's our theme for the year. So I'm going to flip back to that screen. Let's have a look. Get it done, and as part of that process, you're going to start to create some belief that you can do it and that it is possible. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is to write that down and start to think how this applies to you. Okay. Hope that makes sense. Get it done. Get it done. It's a very simple theme this year, but it's the thing that's going to allow us to actually get through the process. All right. Today, I wanted to do a little bit of a restock, a reevaluate, a restart, given it's the beginning of the year. And it's a great time to do it because, well, we're at the beginning and no place like the start to get cracking. So whenever I start thinking about practice, there are 2 key questions that always come to mind for me, and we're going to run through those now. And one of the reasons this is important is because of something I'm about to do, which is called Fly on the Wall. And hopefully, if you're on Basecamp the last couple of days, you would have seen me writing about this, and hopefully you've already gone to the website and signed up for it. Fly on the Wall, what is it? Well, the idea of fly on a wall is kind of piggybacking or watching very closely the process of setting up a clinic. Why am I doing that? Well, at the end of last year, we made the decision, my family and I, to move from Canberra to the Sunshine Coast. So I'm in a position where I need to, or I want to start another clinic. And now I got to start from scratch. And the question is, well, if I was going to start again, or if I was going to build my practice, or if I was going to open a second location, or if I was going to move towns or suburbs or cities or states or countries, how would I go about doing that? What steps would I take? And what I'm going to do is actually go through this process. And as much as this is kind of an experiment and a bit of a lab, in the sense that, you know, I'm going to show you how I do it, this is very real for us, because what I've got to do is turn around and start a new practice. And I haven't done this in a long time. And to be honest, it's quite daunting to be starting from scratch again. So what I want you to do is to perhaps, if you go back to Basecamp, if I can find it, I'll pull it up, the link. I want you to go to that website. I want you to log to sign up for the program. And it's just really a follow-along program. The other thing I'd like to do is to flick it out to all your colleagues, because I think anyone in practice, whether they're Chinese medicine or osteo or, I don't know, physio or massage or anything else, would benefit from this. In fact, any business would benefit, because it's about how do I start in a new marketplace. And what you're going to see is that I'm going to start in a very simple way. And the very first thing that I do is to set some goals and to go back to absolute basics. And what I'm going to do in a minute is flip to a present part of a presentation that I give to university students, usually in their first and second and third year studying Chinese medicine. And it asks two very basic questions. And these are the two questions that I'm going to ask of myself in setting up this new practice. And I suggest you ask of yourself now. And the questions are questions that I've certainly asked of you before, and you should have answered for yourself many times. But at the beginning of the year, when you're seeking clarity, it's a great time to go back and actually reevaluate, reassess, and re-answer these questions, I suppose. Because if you answer these questions thoroughly and appropriately and correctly, then it forms the basis for answering many other questions about what your image, what your brand, what your clinic looks like, the sort of location that it is, how often you work, what sort of life-work balance do you have, what sort of money do you want to earn, what sort of money are you going to charge, what kind of marketing you're going to do. These things are all going to be based on answering these two very simple questions. And I call it the B and the C question. There is an A, but you guys are beyond that because that's a student question. But the B and the C question are the things we're going to focus on today. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move over to that. And we're going to ask these questions. Now, I'm going to answer them for you from a fly-on-the-wall perspective. And I want you to think about answering them for yourselves as well. All right, let me just get this technology right. There we go. All right, so now just bear in mind that these slides come from a university lecture that I've given a number of times, so all the words won't be appropriate to you, but the questions certainly are. And as I said, there's a B question and a C question. And this is where I want you to sort of think along with me, and not a bad idea to take some notes at this point, because what we're doing really is creating a blueprint for the sort of question, clinic that we're going to be running, okay? And a blueprint is a great thing because it gives you a plan. If I think about a blueprint, it's a structured, step-by-step way of moving forward to completion in a project. And it gives you the start point, it gives you the end point, it shows you the overall vision, and it gives you step-by-step. So what we're doing is creating a blueprint. Okay, so indeed, what is this question? Well, the first question is, what kind of practice would I like to work in or would I like to run? Now, it's a kind of a very simple and kind of a funny sort of a question, but it's incredibly relevant because many of us don't actually start with this question. We just kind of start. And the sort of example I'd give to you, and I give it to my patients as well, if we're going to make a start, then it's not a bad idea of knowing where we're trying to get to. Now, the example I like is, I can get in my car and I can turn on the engine, put my seatbelt on, reverse out of the driveway and start driving. Now, there's no doubt I can do that. I can do it quite safely. But if I don't know where I'm going, I will certainly get somewhere, but it might not be somewhere I want to go. And sometimes an unexpected journey is an exciting thing. But when it comes to business, really having a good idea of where you want to go is a pretty good starting point. So our starting point is to have that idea of what it is we're trying to develop, okay? What are we actually trying to develop? So how would I answer this question from a fly-on-the-wall perspective? What kind of practice would I like to work in or would like to run? Well, given my experience, and I'm going to answer this for myself in creating this new practice. And the sort of practice that I'd like to work in or to run is a practice that I'm in complete control of. So, I've been in a position where my practice is effectively run by my patients. In other words, work 24/7, worked around the clock answering emails and answering the phone and taking appointments. And and it just doesn't work. You know, I've got 3 young kids, as you've probably noticed. It just doesn't work. So you've got to work out what is important for you in terms of the sort of practice you want to run. I want to run a very professional, high-level practice that delivers incredible quality, incredible outcomes, and is there to benefit the patient and the community. That's the sort of practice that I'd like to run. But what I'd like to do it in a way that is sustainable for myself. So I really enjoy taking my kids to school. I enjoy doing reading in their classrooms, you know, once a week. I like to be able to pick them up from school, take them to sport. I want to be a hands-on kind of a father. So for me, working school hours is really important. So my practice is really going to be a 9:30 till 2 or 2:30 kind of a practice, but middle of the day practice. And at this stage, I'm looking at 1 to 2 days a week to begin with. So if you could equally be talking about running a practice that is full-time, 5 days a week, 9 till 5 or 9 till 6, that's perfectly fine. This question is your question. You've got to answer it to the best of your ability, and it's going to be influenced by where you've been in the last year, where you are right now, and where you want to be at the end of this year. Okay, so just because maybe you've answered this question before, I strongly suggest that you do it again. So as I'm answering it for myself from a fly on the wall perspective, you should be starting to think, oh yeah, that makes sense. No, I wouldn't do it like that. Yes, I do it like that. And I want you to start taking some notes around this. So what kind of practice would you like to run? Professional, high-end, great quality, excellent customer service, great follow-up, excellent referral network, high stand in the community, community engagement, community training, otherwise getting out and speaking. That's, part of what I'd really like to do. The sort of practice I want is where I'm out talking to people, because I really enjoy that part of it. I want a practice that supports my family financially. I want a practice that supports my family in terms of work-life balance, hence those shorter days. So that's the kind of practice that I'd like to work in and run. Now, other questions could be, staffing questions. Now, my current practice in Canberra is fully staffed. It's in that senior practitioner model to the point where I'm no longer working in the clinic at all. I've got a senior practitioner in there doing my job effectively, and support staff to help manage that process, which frees me up to be able to do something else like start another clinic or whatever it happens to be. So however, in this model, I want to do it much more simply. So it's going to be a single person practice. I'm not that interested in taking on space of my own, so it will be a practice within another clinic, but it will be very independent. I'm not going to work for someone. I'm not going to go on a percentage. What I am going to do is to rent a space that I can then set up the Perry Centre 2.0. In other words, the second clinic under that Perry Centre banner. Okay, and this would be appropriate for someone who is either starting out fresh or someone who's changing locations or moving towns, or perhaps even thinking about opening a second practice. And that's the way that I'm viewing it. Yes, it's a new practice, but it's a second practice under that existing banner. So I can use some of that infrastructure to help support the growth of this next practice over that 1 or 2 days a week, and then we can reassess from there. So that's the kind of practice that I'd like to work in. And that answers a good many questions about that sort of practice. Okay, I hope that makes sense. The practice needs to be professional. It needs to deliver great quality and great service. Okay, so go ahead and I suggest straight after this call, you get into your notebook and you start making some notes. Answer this question. I call this the B question. It's about the business side of things. What kind of practice? What kind of business do I run? How does that look? How does it come together, and what do I do with it? Okay. Now, let me just see what this next slide is going to tell you. Why is it so important? Well, answering these questions is critical, because what it does do is it establishes your mindset. So if you're going to move forward this year, the best way to move forward is to have some clarity around what you're going to do. So from a fly on the wall perspective, I have great clarity about what I want. I want a 2-day-a-week practice, 10 till 2. I'm going to work within my niche, which is fertility and pregnancy. I'm going to still work in much the same way as I have. So I have really good clarity about what I want and what I need, and it makes it easier to go out and actually find that, okay, which is really important. All right. So it's probably worth thinking through this really quickly. What does it involve in terms of what kind of practice? Well, you know, it depends. You can go as far as you like with this. I think that the more clarity you have, the easier it is to find the thing you're looking for. So for me, I want to think about the look, the shape, the feel, the color, and the smell of the practice. How many patients do I want? How many phone calls do I need to fill the diary? What does my diary look like? How many people, and how long are the appointments? Are they half hour, 45? Are they 60 minutes? Are they something different? What kind of patients? What sort of patients do I want? And this goes right back to that Health Leaders Academy concept of the A-class patient. Now, you shouldn't be seeking anyone other than the A-class patient. And that A-class patient is also, you know, that I could transfer across to talk about your avatar client. Your avatar client is going to be your A-class patient, someone who is in need of your service, someone who is ready to take your service on, and someone who you really want to treat. You know, and we all have patients like that. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story while I'm kind of at it. I had I ran a competition for our patients late last year, and the prize was a half-day mini retreat with me. In other words, one-on-one, half a day. We hang out, we do the consultation, we do the treatment. We spend a lot of time kind of working on that particular person. And because it was one-on-one, I was a little bit worried about, you know, what if I got someone that I didn't get along with, or I didn't like, or was a bit of a challenge, and that was a worry to me. And because we tend to only attract our avatar or A-class clients, the person who won that prize actually was one of our A-class clients, and we had a terrific day and we got a lot of work done. It was actually enjoyable for both of us. So getting that right is really, really important. So I'd encourage you to go back to the Health Leaders Academy program, have a look at avatar client, make sure you know who your avatar client is. What sort of conditions do you want to treat? And, you know, obviously that comes down to what's your niche. For me, it's about women's health, fertility, pregnancy, general gynecology. You've got to work out what your particular niche market is. The sort of outcomes you want, well, that's pretty obvious. I mean, you want to get great outcomes. Yeah, everyone wants that. What kind of income do you want from the clinic? What kind of income do you want? And that's really important, because that's going to help you, you know, make sure you've got your pricing structure right, how many patients you need, and so on. And a lot of people set the bar really low. I asked a colleague this exact question. In fact, she's a student, asked this question about 12 months or so, and the question was really simple. What's your ideal income, personal income? And her answer was around $36,000 a year. And, you know, it's not really striving for very much. You know, you don't have to do too much doing 36 grand a year. You want to set your sights a little bit higher, and you want to start to work towards how many patients do I need in order to start generating that kind of income. And then the last line there just says, what would Michael Gerber say? Well, you should have heard of Michael Gerber. I've talked about him a lot. He wrote a book called The E-Myth. And what Michael Gerber would say at this point is to start with the end in mind. In fact, I'm mixing this a little bit, because Stephen Covey would say the same thing. And in fact, he said it very clearly in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And start with the end in mind has to do with clarity. So if you can answer this question, then you can start to move towards it. And the clearer it is, in a sense, the easier it is to get there. Now, it doesn't mean that your vision can't change. It doesn't mean that your answers to those questions don't change, but you've got to have a starting point. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Your turn, well, you can do that later on. Where am I up to? I lost my place. There we go. Okay. So let's move on to the second question. And the second question is the C question. And, you know, I kind of think about these two as the yin and the yang of your practice. One talks about the business side of things, and one talks about the clinic side of things. And the clinic side of things really is to do with you and how you want to function in your clinic. And in a way, I've sort of answered the two together, but I'd like you to do it separately as much as you can. So the other part of this equation, C equals clinic ethic. In other words, what is it you want to, how do you want your clinic to run from a clinical perspective? How do you want to treat your patients? How do you want to be seen in the community? How do you go through that process? And it's about creating good clinical decision making. Now, let me just clarify that a little bit. Now, this, in the context of a student talk, this is talking literally about making good clinical decisions. Now, you guys have been in practice for a while already. This is not so much about that. It's more about how do you put everything, wrap everything together in a way that makes sense for the patient. And the way that I would talk about it, or the word that I would use, is framing. And we've talked about this a fair bit. And framing has to do with how do you frame your treatment? How do you frame your consultation in a way that makes sense to the patient? Because remember, when the patient comes to see you for the first time, they're full of hope and they're full of expectation, but they don't really know what to expect. In other words, what are you going to be like? What's the clinic going to be like? What's the treatment going to be like? What's acupuncture going to be like? Do I have to take some nasty tasting herbs? Are they going to taste nice? How long do I need to come for? What's the likelihood of an outcome? What do other people think about the clinic? So when you start that process, you've got to talk about framing things for the patient. And for you, developing good clinical decision making is about, well, how do you frame it in a way that makes sense to that patient, that makes it much more likely that they're going to jump on board and take your advice. Okay, that's really important. And a big part of that is building programs and walking them through it and using the anatomy for consultation. All of that is about making good clinical decision making skills. Okay. The second part is about building patient rapport. We've sort of covered that. Explaining things in a way that's consistent and easily understood. It's worth talking about this really quickly because it's come up a couple of times this week in other conversations I've had with some of our high level members. And what I've noticed a lot is that, and this may or may not be happening to you, but we try and a good example is I'm going to try and explain chi to somebody. Now look, I spent 5 years at uni and the last 8 years trying to work out for myself what chi is. And you're going to explain that in 20 or 30 seconds to a new patient? Well, you can and you can't. You can in the sense that you can give someone the general gist of what chi is for you. But what happens a lot is that we, in our kind of anxiety to get it right, or perhaps our anxiety not to get bored about saying it the same way, we try and reinvent the wheel over and over and over again. And I've seen my own staff try and do this, explain things differently each and every time a new patient comes in. Now, it's not smart, it's not consistent, it's not worth doing. What you've got to do is to create a method of explanation that is clear and consistent, is true to the theory, makes sense to you, and is in layman's terms so that your patient can understand it. Okay, so whenever I explain chi, for example, I do it word for word the same way each and every time, okay? And I have that down pat over a lot of years for everything that I'm going to explain. And that comes back to when we're creating a program and we're talking about scripts. I watched this over and over again. In fact, I remember one of the, it might have been the Melbourne, and my Melbourne guys might remember this. When Adam and I did the talk in Melbourne, we went through the elevator pitch, okay? And Adam actually wrote up the script on the whiteboard, and the script was something like, well, when this is what I do, okay? And everybody who had a crack at it tried to completely reinvent the wheel, did not follow the script. Now, the point of a script is to follow it, okay? So I've given you the anatomy of a consultation script. It converts at about 95% for me. It should convert at 90% for you, but people aren't using it. They're not following it. I can only say this as strongly as this: just get it done. That's the theme for the year. Get it done. Follow the script. Don't reinvent the wheel. The script works. Memorize it. make it work for you. Okay, so that's all part of developing a method of explanation that is consistent and easily understood. Okay, the last one is really interesting. It's important that we create a feeling of appreciation and gratitude for in your patients, but there's also a flip side to that, is that we should be or have gratitude for the patient. In other words, I've seen a lot of us, and I've been a little bit guilty of it myself if I'm not mindful, of actually, in a sense, taking patients for granted. We need to be grateful that we have these patients. It's not a right. We have no right to these patients. We are privileged to be able to treat them. And that comes across with humility, comes across with gratitude, and it comes across with doing a good job. Okay, so that's all about the clinical side of things. Now, you've got to decide which aspects of those are important for you. As I'm talking this through, these are the sort of things or the sort of answers that I'm coming to, given my experience at this point and what I'm trying to achieve. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so we're kind of moving forward, and that C question is, what kind of practitioner do you want to be? Okay, so there are two very clear questions. What kind of practice, which has to do with the fundamentals of running the business and your marketing and your times and your pricing and all those sorts of things, your location, how often you want to work. Because what kind of practitioner do you want to be really comes down to, well, when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of dealing with the patient, how do you want to do that? How do you want to go about it? What kind of image do you want to portray for yourself? And it's interesting, as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about my avatar client, my avatar patient, the sort of patient that I love having. But I reckon that patients have avatar practitioners. That's a kind of a funny way of saying it, but can you imagine that? We're sort of trying to filter, if you like, our patients, but our patients are doing the same for practitioners. And you get a lot of people who've tried this, that, and the other, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to find their avatar practitioners. So you ought to be that for your patient if you possibly can be. Okay, you try and be the avatar practitioner, and a lot of that comes down to listening and building rapport and giving great service and value and all those sorts of things. Okay, so I hope that kind of makes sense in that way. So I want you to seek clarity for the start of this year by answering these two simple questions. Okay, what kind of practice? And let's give it a past and a future tense. What kind of practice do you run? What kind of practice did you run in 2014? And what kind of practice do you want to run in 2015? In other words, what's different and what's the same? And get real clarity around that. Okay, what kind of business are you going to run? The second question is, what kind of practitioner do you want to be? Let's future and past as well. The past is, well, what kind of practitioner were you last year? Did you listen as much? Were you as empathetic as you could be? Did you spend as much time as you could with your patient? Did you get those structures right in terms of, initial review, return and review consultations? And what kind of practitioner do you want to be moving into this new year? And get some real clarity around that. What I'd love you to do is to write it up, put it on Basecamp, and let's have a look at it. Okay. So, clarity. Let's just get back really quickly to our themes for the year. Theme 1, get it done. So what I want you to do is to think about it in this way. And I've done this myself. I've been in the bookshop and a book's jumped off. It's a self-help book. It's jumped off the shelf and forced me to look at it and ultimately read it. And I've read it, I've digested it, and I've done nothing about it. Okay, I reckon we've all had that experience. We've probably had that experience multiple times in our lives. Unfortunately, that information, if we don't use it, is not much value to us. So I want you to take some very practical steps to create the blueprint for your own success. And that's, in a sense, why I'm doing the fly on the wall. I want you to have the opportunity to watch me go through this process. And what would be even better is for you to follow along with me. Do it with me as we go along. Build your practice at the same time. It's a great way to do it. Okay, that's why I'm going to do it now. If you haven't already signed up for Fly on the Wall, make sure you do. Just need your name and email so that you can get access to the updates as I put them out. At this stage, the Fly on the Wall program is free. My intention is, presuming it works, is to sell this as a suite of products down the track. Okay, so in a sense, you guys are getting first look, beta testing it, and what I'd love you to do is send it out to as many people as you can. Put the link on your Facebook, put it on your clinic website, send it to your email list, tell your friends, your colleagues, get as many people as you can looking at it, because I think it's going to be really valuable. And it's a bit of a warts and all process. Fly on the Wall means you're going to see what works, you're going to see what doesn't work, you're going to see the success, and you're going to see the failure. And I think that's really important to go through that process as much as possible. So I'm going to try and keep right on top of those updates. Pretty exciting to be able to share that with you, to be honest. Okay. What I wanted to do now was move on a little bit to a couple of things that have come up already this year. And Andrew from Melbourne posted a video the other day, which was actually terrific, and it was in that style of a screen capture video. Actually did a really great job, but there are a couple of points that I'd like to make that will help to improve your video, particularly if you're doing it in that way. Okay. Now, the great thing about Andrew's was the pace, the way he was speaking, and this is true of Anita's videos as well. They come across as calm, knowledgeable, professional, empathetic, and as people who I'd like to engage with, that sort of person myself. So that is terrific. Andrew's text on the screen was really good, and his use of images were really good as well. Okay, but when you're creating a video, and the other thing that was really good was his use of a backing soundtrack, and his voice was really nice and clear and well recorded. Okay, no real background noise. It was nice and actually worked really well. How would I go about improving that video? Well, you want to get a little bit good at editing, and editing is really a process of getting rid of the stuff you don't want in there. Okay, so for example, if I pause now, that's pretty boring. Okay, you're gonna lose your audience pretty quickly. Okay, so you want to, particularly in a video that's only 1 or 2 minutes long, you want to get rid of all of those breaks, and you can do it in your editing software by looking at having a look at the audio track, and you can see when you're talking, the audio will dip up and down. When you are not talking, there'll be nothing. Okay, and what you want to do is you want to cut that nothing out. Now, it'll still mean that your natural volume, your natural way of speaking is as it was, doesn't get changed, but the video is punchier because you're condensing the space where you're taking a breath, or you're thinking about what you're doing, or you're reading your lines, or whatever it is. You want to get rid of that straight away. Okay, and that will get rid of 10 or 15 seconds perhaps over a 2-minute video, and it will just make it a bit more punchier, which is important. The soundtrack, it is important to have a soundtrack. Make sure your soundtrack gives the kind of emotion that you're looking for. If I was going to have a criticism of that particular video, and it's a very minor one, but it would benefit from a change. I have two stock pieces of music that I use, a kind of a bit melancholy. Are you struggling with fertility, period pain, and general gynecology stuff? Well, great. If this is you, I'm sorry you're struggling with this, but I can help. A second bit of music is a bit more lively, a bit more upbeat, and it changes the mood. So think about having a couple of tracks you can use on your videos. The other thing too is you want to make your video visually appealing, especially if it's not a talking head. You want to give some visual impact. So make sure you've got plenty of contrast in your slides. Now, I'll give you an example. Oops, that's not how I want to do it. Let's go here. All right, I'll give you an example. All right, one we've been using already. These are not good slides. Okay, why? Because it's a really boring grey background. It was pretty trendy about 3 or 4 years ago, not so much now. Boring font. It's just boring, basically. What else can I say? Boring, boring, boring. And it lacks that contrast. If I compare that to this one, and I just make that a little bit smaller so you can get an idea of what the slide looks like. In fact, well, let me play it instead. Okay. So there's the slide. Visually appealing. It's got that blueprint background, the yellow pops, and you've got some really simple but clear text on it. Okay, so that's a good example, you know, I think of something that has contrast and visual impact. Let me see if I've got another one I can show you there. It's not probably quite what we're after. Here's a really short one. White background, clear font, contrast, you know, white and strong yellow, nice clear picture. Same again, movement. In other words, it's not just all in the same place. The next slide, it moves about. And then the third one, you've got an image, okay? Here's a good example. This is from one of our team members, Jonathan Yang, who's on the Gold Coast. I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this. This is one we worked on together in only 10 slides. Contrast, and you can see a bit of a pattern. My videos, or the videos that I have an input into at the moment, are very similar in design, because I think they tend to have quite good impact. Nice, clear picture, logo, change it up a little bit, a few simple images, nice, clear call to action, call me, phone number, underlined words and bold words that are important. Another box, again, slightly off center, so your eyes drawn to it. Image that kind of relates to the text, a simple end, and then the number again in bold. So there's a couple of examples there where contrast is used quite well. Okay, so if I was going to make any suggestions about improving the way your video looks, that would be it. Okay. Now, what I'd like to offer too, and I put this out last year, I don't know if anyone wasn't ready for it, or you're happy with doing your videos yourselves. If you're struggling with video, either technically or with scripting or with editing or putting it up, or even just thinking that it's all too hard, let me know. Send me an email. Email me, or no, actually do it on Basecamp. Let me know, because it's something I can help you with, okay? I can help by giving you a little bit of coaching around it. I can help by doing some aspects of it with you. I can help by doing it for you. It's really up to you. Why do we jump up and down about video? Because video is important. It has movement, it has sound, it helps to build brand, it helps to build credibility, and most importantly, it starts to create a conversation. And, you know, this is another theme you could potentially add to your list for the year, is you want to take every opportunity you can to engage somebody in a conversation, because a conversation is ultimately what's going to get somebody over the line in terms of being a friend, if that's what you're looking for, or being a patient, or being an employee or a colleague. You want to open that conversation, talk to them, and this is a great way to do it. And one of the things that it does is when someone comes in, we talked about framing earlier, you know, how do you frame your consultation? Well, when someone's looking for their avatar practitioner, I'm hoping it's going to be you, what are they looking for? They want to know you a little bit. And in marketing talk, and I talk about this a lot with you guys, is KLT. Now, if you don't know what KLT is by now, you haven't been listening to the previous webinars and live events, because KLT stands for know, like, and trust, and the conversation is where that's going to happen. Video is so important because it gives you the opportunity to show somebody who you are and what you stand for, and then they can then and start that conversation, and then they can decide whether you are potentially a good match for them or not, whether you're going to be their A class or their avatar practitioner. So that's the reason I think video is so important. And there are two styles of video, as we've discussed before. There's the talking head video, which is like this. I like these videos. They're easy to make. You can do them off the cuff. And if you have a look at the Fly on the Wall website, you'll see a couple of videos there that I recorded last night. You know, they're okay. It's just me being who I am and starting a conversation, and I think that's okay. If you're not comfortable being in front of the video camera yet, then do the screen capture style video. It's easy. You can pump them out quickly. You can do them to a bit of a formula and a format, and they work really well. If you have a look at, there's two good examples. Anita's example, which on her website, and is a great example of a really good talking head video. And the other example is Jonathan Yang's, which we looked at a minute ago. His video is a screen capture style video. Both of them work I think very well, and they will help to open that conversation with their audience. Because once you've done that, then you have the opportunity to continue that conversation. Hopefully that continuance is in the format of a consultation in your clinic, where you get the opportunity to actually to help them. Okay, so I want you to think about video. If you're freaked out by video, that's okay. It's important. If you're freaked out by video, and I say that in the nicest possible way, if it's to the point where you're just not doing it, then I want you to post it to me on Basecamp, and I want you to ask for my help, because it's that important. If you're doing okay but you'd like some advice on scripting or editing, then equally contact me. Let's get those videos up and running. And it's certainly, when I build the new website for the new clinic on the Fly on the Wall program, you'll see the process that I go through in terms of creating that video. In fact, what I'll probably do is record the process of doing it, so you can see how it goes. Most likely it'll be a screen capture video, just to give you a little bit of a pre-side into what that's likely to look at. But video is incredibly important. So if step one out of today is answering the first two questions, what kind of practice and what kind of practitioner, then the second bit of homework, I suppose, is where are you at with video, and do you need help? Okay, really, really simple, really, really straightforward. All right. Now, I hope everyone's going okay. I'm here on the Sunshine Coast, not as hot as it has been this last week. Boy, it's been really hot, but pretty good today. I hope you're all going well after Christmas and New Year and all that sort of stuff. Back to work. Okay. Remember, theme one: get it done. Theme two: create the belief. And you got to do it in that order, because the belief will come from from actually doing the work. All right. Fantastic. We're going to run out of time pretty quickly today, and I've still got lots of stuff that I want to tell you. There's a few things that are coming up pretty consistently at the moment that I wanted to address, and it comes to do with the anatomy of a consultation, and also building a program for your patients. And when I say build a program, it's part of that framing process in that initial consultation. It's a part of that anatomy of a consultation. All of those things we've talked about in fair detail already, and I think that a lot of people are starting to do the first component of that really well. You know, and as a quick reminder of the anatomy of a consultation, you start with the chief complaint, and then you work through where did the patient come from, where are they now, where are they headed. You create them a plan, and you explain the diagnosis. Then you tell them what your role is for them, and you explain how often they're going to come, what the treatment's likely to be, and who's going to do that treatment to them. If it's you and somebody else, if it's just somebody else, whatever that happens to be. The next part is you explain, once you explained your role, you explain their role to them, and the consequences of not taking that role seriously. Okay. And then the final part is where people are coming unstuck, and I think it's anxiety around asking for money. I think that's what it probably boils down to. And a lot of people say, yes, no, I don't have a problem with that, and yet this part is not happening. Okay, the final component of this, given that you've sought micro commitments all along the way, does that make sense? You're okay with that? Any questions? How are you going? How's it feel? Does it resonate? All that sort of stuff. Micro commitments. And it comes right to the end. And say, okay, but based on everything we've talked about today, is it okay if we build a program for you? Yes, terrific. Okay, well, let's go and build it. And now the program, and you can call it different things. You can call it your signature protocol. You can call it a program. I don't know. You can call it Jack and Jill, whatever you want to call it. It's your best solution to whatever their problem is. Okay, so, and it doesn't matter whether it's tennis elbow or infertility or migraine or back pain. You are going to have an ideal solution that you can package up into a protocol or into a program that's going to make sense for that patient. So, for example, if it was knee pain, acute knee pain, my program might only be 2 weeks long, okay? But it may have a maintenance period on the back end of that, which I need to include in my solution if I think that's important to them. If that person is going to have patches or herbal medicine or liniment or heat packs or physical therapy or massage or something else or rest or some kind of dietary change or some supplements, all of those things need to be packaged up into that program for the patient. Okay, really, really important. So this is your solution. Okay, and most people are still, still okay at that point. The stumbling block is here, and I'm going to give you my script exactly again. It's really simple, straightforward, and I want you to write it down, and I want you to learn it word for word. I don't want you to change it. Okay, I want you to get super comfortable with these words. All right. Okay, and I'll put some fake numbers in there just for sake of the conversation. Okay. So here's your program in its entirety. The program total is $2,200. Now you've got a couple of ways to take care of that today. Some of our patients like to pay up front because we give a 10% discount, which will save you a couple of $100. Or you can do it on a direct debit over the course of your treatment. Which one of those options would suit you best today? Now, it may seem like my screen is frozen, but no, I'm pausing. In fact, I'm stopping. I'm shutting up. And you've got to deliver this in a way that is not emotional, is not full of anxiety, your anxiety about money and asking for it. You've got to really put it in a way that is simple and straightforward and gives them the option. And we've talked a bit in the past about moving from uncheck to check. Remember, I don't know if you remember what uncheck. Uncheck is any situation where somebody doesn't have the option to say yes or no. Okay, so you're going through your consultation. Now, what's a check move? A check move is taking them out of uncheck and into check. In other words, giving them the opportunity to say yes or no. So a classic check move is a micro commitment, isn't it? Okay, because you want them to say yes or no. For example, does that make sense? Well, they have to say yes or no. They don't really, there's not really another answer for that. So you're giving them the opportunity to either move forward or for you to need to go back and explain something. And this is what that final sentence does. Which one of those two solutions would suit you best today? And they have to choose. They have to say yes or no. Okay? And we have to be, and this is part of our anxiety. We're probably worried they're going to say no. And you know what? At least 10% of the time they will say no. And you've got to be okay with that. And the way that I kind of rationalize it is when someone says no, either the timing's not right or they've decided that actually you're not their avatar practitioner, or they just actually don't have the money, or you know what, they're really not committed enough to see it through. There's not enough pain for them to make the changes necessary. And all of those reasons are perfectly valid reasons for them to say no to you. And you've got to be okay with that. But in my experience, if you run through this process, if you use the anatomy of a consultation clearly and effectively, and you take those micro commitments, then somewhere around 90% of those people will actually say yes. And that's the second part of our theme for this year about creating belief. You've got to start doing it so you can start to create the belief around being able to do it and make it work. And the more often you practice it, the better you'll get at it. And believe it or not, your conversion is directly related to your skill in actually delivering the message, not in the message itself. Okay, you've got to be able to deliver the message, and you can't learn it without doing it. It really is an experiential thing. Okay, so I'm gonna just about sign off there by revisiting our theme for this year, and the theme is get it done. Okay, do the work. Stop procrastinating around. If this is you, and not all of you, but I suffer from this. If you're procrastinating on something because of anxiety or fear or worry or whatever it is, just give it a go and see what happens, and create the belief from the experience. That's the very best thing you can do in terms of making a start. So get it done in order to create the belief. And I think you'll find once you do it a few times, it will become easier and easier. Certainly the guys on the team who are doing this already are getting better at it. Their conversions are improving and their businesses are improving at the same time, which is pretty exciting. Okay, so it's really important. So let's just recap for today. Today is about a restart for 2015. Answer these questions to gain clarity. 1, what kind of practice do you want to run or work in? 2, what kind of practitioner do you want to be? The second part is fly on the wall. Make sure you jump on and sign up for it, because I think you're going to benefit from watching me do the hard work of setting up a brand new practice. The third part is video. Make sure you're on top of you. Get those videos done. If you're in Byron, then you should have some of that work already completed. I should be seeing lots more videos on the website. Okay, so please pop them up so we can have a look at them. If you need help, please ask, and we'll find a solution to make it work. Get it done in terms of programs, making those sales, putting things together for your patients. It's incredibly important. Okay, so that brings us to the end. The kids have been pretty good. Although they're a little bit boisterous right now. Fly on the wall and make sure you register. A couple of things. We're getting very close to our first implementation dates out in the States, Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. There's been a bit of a change to my personal circumstance, so a couple of those dates are going to change. And I apologise for that, but it can't be avoided at this stage. I will post those new dates over the weekend, and I'm really looking forward to coming out and helping you for the kick off the year. One of the things I'd like to do is to think about video and scripting and how to do that, websites, planning, goal setting, and hopefully we can do that in those first implementation days. So keep an eye out for those dates, which will come out very shortly in the next few days. So it's time for me to sign off. If you've got any questions or comments, I'll hang around for a few minutes and happy to answer those. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you very soon live and talking to you. Until then, remember, get it done in order to create the belief, and I'll see you soon.